The white walls of the medical center were too clean. Everything smelled like chemicals and fear. Kang Dai-ho sat in the small room and checked his recording device one more time. His scaled hands moved slowly as he adjusted the settings. He had been waiting for this interview for 3 years. Across from him sat the most wanted human in the galaxy. Park Ji-woo looked older than his 42 years. Deep lines cut across his face like scars from old battles. His left arm was missing, from the elbow down, replaced by a simple metal prosthetic. His right eye was cloudy white, blind from some old injury, but his remaining good eye was sharp and alert, watching everything. Ji-woo wore the gray clothes that all refugees got on Nexus Prime. The neutral world was one of the few places in the galaxy where humans could still exist. Even here, they needed special permits and constant monitoring. The Galactic Council had made sure of that. "You know why I am here," Daeho said in his rough voice. His species, the Vorthak, sounded like they were always angry when they spoke. "The galaxy wants to know the truth about your species." Ji-woo said nothing for a long moment. He stared at his metal hand as if seeing it for the first time. "The truth," he repeated slowly. "The truth is that you should have left us alone." Daeho pressed a button and the recording device hummed to life. A small red light blinked steadily. "Tell me about Colony Omega-7. "No." Ji-woo shook his head. "If you want the real story, we start at the beginning. We start with first contact. We start with when your people thought humans were harmless." The journalist leaned back in his chair. The metal groaned under his weight. Vorthak were much heavier than humans, with thick bones and dense muscle. "Very well. Tell me about first contact." Ji-woo closed his good eye and was quiet for almost a minute. When he opened it again, something had changed in his expression. It was softer somehow, younger. 50 years ago, your ships came to Earth. We thought it was the greatest day in human history." Daeho had read the official reports many times. First contact with Earth had been routine. The planet was scanned, the species evaluated, and contact. Protocols followed exactly as written. Humans were classified as Category C, primitive but potentially useful. "We were so excited," Ji-woo continued. "Finally, we were not alone in the universe. Finally, we had proof that life existed beyond our small blue world. Your ambassadors were polite. They offered us trade agreements and technology exchanges. They offered us homes on other worlds. The Galactic Council was generous to your species," Daeho said carefully. Ji-woo laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Generous? Yes, that is what you called it. You gave us the scraps from your table and we were grateful. We did not understand that we were being tested." The human stood up suddenly and walked to the small window. Outside, the city of New Haven stretched toward the horizon. Aliens of dozens of species moved through the streets below. Tall Etherians with their crystal bodies caught the sunlight. Nebulites drifted in their environmental suits like walking clouds. Constructor mechs rolled on treads instead of legs. "I was 22 when I left Earth," Ji-woo said to the window. "Young and stupid and full of dreams. I wanted to see the galaxy. I wanted to learn from species that had traveled the stars for thousands of years." "What was your profession?" Daeho asked. "Engineering. Specifically, terraforming and atmospheric processing. I was good at my job. Better than good, actually. I could look at a dead world and see how to make it livable. The Etherian supervisors noticed my work early." Ji-woo turned back from the window. His face had hardened again. "That should have been my first warning. When something notices you in this galaxy, it usually means trouble." Daeho made notes on his data pad. "You were assigned to Colony Omega-7. Along with 4,000 other humans. We thought we were colonists. We thought we were building new homes for our species. What we really were was lab rats in the galaxy's biggest experiment." The room fell silent except for the hum of the air recycling system. Daeho had interviewed thousands of beings over his career as a journalist. War criminals, political leaders, scientists, soldiers. But he had never interviewed anyone who made him feel as uncomfortable as this scarred human did. "The colony was beautiful," Ji-woo said quietly. "Omega-7 was a garden world. Blue skies, clean water, fertile soil. The Etherians had been terraforming it for decades before we arrived. They said it was a gift to humanity, a reward for our cooperation. But you do not believe that now. Now I know it was a testing ground. They wanted to see what would happen when humans were given ideal conditions. They wanted to see how quickly we would adapt, how much we would change, how dangerous we might become. Jiwoo sat down again. His metal hand made a soft clicking sound as he placed it on the table. I brought my family there. My wife Kim Hye-jin was an atmospheric engineer like me. Our daughter Kim So-young was just 9 years old when we arrived. She loved the place immediately, said the air tasted like flowers. For the first time, real emotion crept into the human's voice. Pain, loss, something deeper than anger. So-young would be 21 now, he said, if she was still alive. Daeho set down his stylus. What happened to your family? The same thing that happened to everyone I cared about. The same thing that happened to 99% of my species. They were murdered because the galaxy decided we were too dangerous to live. The recording device continued its steady humming. The red light blinked like a heartbeat. But that comes later in the story, Jiwoo said. First, you need to understand what we were like before. You need to understand the humans who thought the galaxy was full of friends instead of predators. Daeho nodded slowly. Tell me about the early days on Omega 7. Jiwoo closed his eyes again. When he spoke, his voice was different, younger, sadder. The early days were the happiest of my life. Jiwoo stared at the ceiling as he remembered. The medical center's lights were harsh and white, nothing like the warm yellow sun of Omega 7. But in his mind, he could still see that beautiful world. We arrived on a transport ship with 2,000 other families, he said. The journey took 6 months, but it felt like an adventure. So-young spent hours in the observation deck watching the stars. She wanted to visit every world we passed. Daeho made notes while the human talked. The journalist had studied the colony records before coming here. On paper, Omega 7 looked like a perfect success story. High productivity, low crime rates, excellent cooperation between species. The first thing I noticed was how clean everything was, Jiwoo continued. The Etherians had built the colony like a garden, curved buildings that followed the natural landscape, energy systems that used the planet's own magnetic field. Even the factories looked beautiful. What was your job there? Daeho asked. Atmospheric processing. The planet's air was already breathable, but we were working to optimize it. Make it perfect for human lungs while keeping it safe for other species too. It was challenging work, but I loved it. Jiwoo's metal hand tapped against the table. The sound was rhythmic, almost musical. Hyejin worked in the same department. She was brilliant with atmospheric chemistry, could balance gas, mixtures in her head while other engineers needed computers. The Etherian supervisors were impressed with her from day one. Tell me about the supervisors. Veltar was the primary Etherian in charge of our department. His species looks like living crystal, 7 feet tall, transparent body that changes color with his emotions. When he was pleased, he glowed soft blue. When he was concerned, he turned orange. Jiwoo paused and looked at Daeho. Veltar was orange a lot during those first few months. We thought it was because we were still learning. Now I know he was orange because we were learning too fast. The human stood up and began pacing around the small room. Even with his missing arm and blind eye, he moved with careful precision, like a soldier, Daeho thought, or like someone who had learned to be ready for anything. The colony had 15,000 residents total, Jiwoo said. 4,000 humans, 8,000 Etherians, 2,000 nebulites, and about 1,000 others from smaller species. Everyone had a job, everyone had a purpose. It felt like paradise. What did your daughter do there? Jiwoo's pace slowed. So-young went to the colony school. It was integrated. Human children learning alongside young Etherians and nebulites. She was one of the brightest kids in her class, always asking questions, always wanting to know how things worked. That seems normal for a human child. That's what we thought too. Human curiosity was seen as charming by the other species. They thought it was cute how much we wanted to learn and explore. Jiwoo stopped pacing and looked directly at the journalist. What they didn't realize was how fast we were absorbing everything they taught us. Daeho felt a chill run down his scaled spine. What do you mean? Within 6 months, human children were outperforming alien students who had been studying for years. So Young was solving math problems that shouldn't have been possible for her age. She was reading in 3 different alien languages. She was building machines in shop class that impressed the constructor instructors. The recording device hummed steadily as Jiwoo returned to his chair. His good eye had a distant look, as if he was seeing things that happened long ago. Dr. Lee Jae-sung ran the colony's research division, Jiwoo said. Brilliant man. He had degrees in physics, engineering, and xenobiology. The Etherians gave him a full laboratory and told him to study whatever interested him. What did he study? Everything. How different species' brains worked, how their technologies interfaced with biological systems, how energy fields affected living tissue. The aliens encouraged his research. They thought it was harmless academic curiosity. Jiwoo laughed quietly. Lee Jae-sung published his findings in the colony database every month. The Etherians read every report and filed them away. They thought they were just monitoring primitive human science. But they were wrong. They were very wrong. What they didn't understand was that humans don't just study things. We improve them. We find flaws and fix them. We take what works and make it work better. Daeho leaned forward in his chair. Give me an example. The atmospheric processors. Within 1 year, Hye-jin had increased their efficiency by 30%. She found ways to extract more oxygen from the same amount of plant matter. She discovered chemical reactions that the Etherians had never considered. How did the supervisors react? Veltar was orange constantly. He kept asking Hye-jin to explain her methods. She was happy to teach him, of course. Humans love to share knowledge. But the more she explained, the more concerned he became. Jiwoo's metal fingers drummed against the table again. The problem wasn't that we were breaking their machines or causing problems. The problem was that we were making everything work better than it ever had before. The colony production reports support this, Daeho said, checking his notes. Output increased 40% in the first year. And that was just the beginning. By year 2, human teams were leading most departments. Not because we were put in charge, but because the other species started asking us for advice. We had become the problem solvers. The human was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I remember the day Veltar asked me to explain how I had redesigned the air filtration system. I showed him the improvements I had made. Simple changes, really. Just more efficient flow patterns and better energy distribution. What was his reaction? He stared at my designs for an hour without saying anything. His crystal body went from orange to deep red. I'd never seen that color before. Later I learned that red meant fear. Fear of what? Fear of being replaced. Fear of becoming obsolete. Fear that the primitive humans were about to surpass their ancient civilization. Jiwoo stood up again and walked back to the window. The alien city below was busy with afternoon traffic, hundreds of different species going about their daily lives. The Etherians had been spacefaring for over 10,000 years, he said. The Nebulites for even longer. They had technologies that seemed like magic to us. Faster than light travel, matter manipulation, energy weapons that could destroy planets. Yet they feared you. They feared us because we were learning. Not just memorizing their knowledge, but understanding it and improving it. And we were doing it in decades instead of centuries. Jiwoo turned back to face Daeho. You want to know why humans are considered the most dangerous species in the galaxy? It's not because we're violent or aggressive. It's because we evolve. We adapt. We never stop trying to become better. The journalist set down his stylus and studied the scarred human. When did you first realize something was wrong? Year 3. That's when the inspection started. Etherian science teams would arrive without warning and demand to review our work. They started requiring approval for any design changes. They limited our access to certain equipment. Did you protest? Of course not. We were guests on their world, using their resources. We thought they were just being careful. We didn't understand that they were trying to slow us down. Jiwoo sat down heavily. The weight of memory seemed to crush him. If we had understood what was happening, maybe we could have prepared. Maybe we could have saved some of them. Saved who? The children. They were always watching the children. The room felt colder now. Daeho noticed that Ji-woo's remaining hand had formed a fist. The human was staring at nothing, lost in memories that clearly brought him pain. "Tell me about the discovery," the journalist said softly. Ji-woo was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, harder. "It started with Yang Tai-woo. He was just a maintenance worker. Nobody important. Nobody dangerous. Or so we thought." "What happened to him?" "There was an accident in the quantum processing plant. A containment field failed during routine maintenance. Yang Tai-woo was working inside when it happened. He should have died instantly. Quantum energy tears apart living tissue at the molecular level." Daeho had read about quantum storms. They were one of the most feared hazards in space. Even advanced species like the Etherians used heavy automation around quantum systems because the risk was too great. "But he didn't die," Ji-woo continued. "When the emergency teams reached him 6 hours later, they found him sitting calmly in the middle of the quantum field. He was reading a technical manual. The energy that should have killed him was flowing around him like water around a rock." "That's impossible." That's what everyone said. The Etherian scientists ran every test they could think of. Yang Tai-woo was completely unharmed. More than unharmed, actually. He was better than before. His reflexes were faster. His thinking was clearer. He could solve complex equations in his head. Ji-woo stood up and began pacing again. The Etherians tried to keep it quiet, but news spreads fast in a colony. Within a week, everyone knew that a human had survived quantum exposure. Within a month, Dr. Lee Jae-sung was studying Yang Tai-woo full-time. What did Lee Jae-sung find? Something that changed everything. Yang Tai-woo's brain patterns had shifted. The quantum exposure had created new neural pathways that shouldn't exist in organic life. He could process information like a computer, but with intuition and creativity that no machine could match. Daeho made careful notes. This part of the story was not in any official report he had seen. How did the colony administration react? Veltar went from red to black. I had never seen an Etherian turn black before. Later I learned it meant terror. Pure, absolute terror. Ji-woo stopped pacing and looked directly at the journalist. "You have to understand, Daeho. For 10,000 years, the Etherians had believed that quantum fields and organic life were incompatible. It was basic physics, a law of nature. Yang Tai-woo had just proven that law wrong. What did they do? They brought in more scientists, teams from the homeworld, military observers, security specialists. Suddenly, the colony was full of officials asking questions and running tests. On Yang Tai-woo? On all of us. They wanted to know if other humans could survive quantum exposure. They wanted to know if we were all potentially dangerous. They started testing our children." Ji-woo's metal hand clenched into a fist. So Young was 12 by then. Bright, curious, always asking questions. They put her in a room with low-level quantum fields and monitored her responses. What happened? She adapted. Within hours, her brain activity changed. She started seeing patterns in the quantum fluctuations. She could predict when the fields would shift before the sensors registered any change. The human sat down heavily. That's when I knew we were in trouble. The way the scientists looked at her. Like she was a specimen instead of a child. Like she was something to be studied instead of someone to be protected. Daeho felt uncomfortable, asking his next question, but he needed to know. Were there other discoveries? Dr. Nam Soo-jin was studying alien biology. She found that human immune systems could adapt to pathogens from other worlds faster than any known species. Diseases that killed Etherians in days barely made humans sick. And Dr. Lee Jae-sung, he made the breakthrough that doomed us all. He discovered that human brains could interface directly with quantum fields. Not just survive exposure, but actually control quantum energy through thought alone. Ji-woo's good eye had a haunted look. He demonstrated it at a colony science meeting. Lee Jae-sung connected his mind to a quantum computer and solved a problem that had puzzled Etherian scientists for centuries. He did it in minutes. How many people witnessed this? Everyone. The entire colony administration was there. Etherians, nebulites, constructors. They watched a human do something they had believed was impossible. They watched him prove that we were not the primitive species they thought we were. The recording device hummed steadily as Ji-woo continued his story. Choi Min-ho was Lee Jae-sung's research partner. Young guy, brilliant physicist. After the demonstration, he started working on quantum tunneling applications. He thought he could create faster-than-light communication systems. Did he succeed? Better. Then succeed. He created a prototype that could transmit information instantly across any distance. No time delay, no energy loss. The Etherians had been trying to build something like that for thousands of years. Ji-woo laughed bitterly. We thought we were helping. We thought we were contributing to galactic science. We were so proud of our achievements. When did you realize the truth? When the military ships arrived. 3 months after Lee Jae-sung's demonstration, a fleet of Etherian warships entered the system. They said it was a routine inspection. But I had worked with Etherians for 3 years. I knew what fear looked like on their crystal faces. What did they inspect? Everything. Our research, our children, our daily activities. They installed monitoring equipment in every building. They restricted our movement. They started separating families for extended interviews. Ji-woo's voice dropped to almost a whisper. That's when Veltar told me the truth. He was genuinely fond of humans, I think. He didn't want to see us destroyed. But he was more afraid of what we might become. What did he tell you? He said the Galactic Council had been watching us since first contact. Every human colony was a test site. They wanted to know how quickly we would develop, how dangerous we might become. Omega-7 was the most successful colony, which made it the most frightening. Dae-ho leaned forward. Frightening how? In 50 years, humans had advanced faster than most species do in 1,000. We were solving problems that the galaxy's oldest civilizations couldn't solve. We were adapting to environments that should have killed us. Our children were displaying abilities that bordered on impossible. What abilities? Ji-woo was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. So Young could manipulate quantum fields with her thoughts. Other children were showing similar gifts. Some could survive in hard vacuum. Others could communicate telepathically across vast distances. A few could phase through solid matter. Phase through solid matter? I saw it myself. Park Min-joon walked through a locked door because he was late for class. Just passed through the metal like it wasn't there. When the teachers asked how he did it, he said it felt natural. Dae-ho set down his stylus. His hands were shaking slightly. What did the Galactic Council decide? Ji-woo looked directly into the journalist's eyes. They decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist. They classified us as a Category X extinction threat. They authorized the use of any force necessary to contain or eliminate us. And then they tried to kill us all. The silence in the room stretched on for minutes. Ji-woo sat perfectly still, staring at his metal hand. Dae-ho could hear his own breathing and the steady hum of the recording device. Outside, the sounds of the alien city continued normally, as if the universe had not just been told about genocide. It was a Tuesday morning, Ji-woo finally said. So Young was getting ready for school. Hye-jin was making breakfast. I was reviewing atmospheric data from the night shift. Everything was normal. When did you know something was wrong? The siren started at exactly 0800 hours. Emergency broadcast signals on every frequency. Veltar's voice announcing a mandatory evacuation drill. All humans were to report to designated shelters immediately. Ji-woo's voice was mechanical now, as if he was reading from a report. We had done drills before. Monthly safety exercises in case of atmospheric breach or seismic activity. This felt different, though. The Etherian voices on the communication system sounded stressed. Did you go to the shelters? Of course. We were good colonists. We followed instructions. Hye-jin grabbed our emergency kit. I took the technical manuals I was working on. So Young brought her school project, a model of quantum field interactions. The human's good eye closed for a moment. I remember holding her hand as we walked to the shelter. She was excited. She thought it might be a real emergency, something interesting instead of a boring drill. How many humans were in your shelter? About 200. Families from our residential sector. I knew most of them. Yang Tai-Wu was there with his wife, Dr. Lee Jae-sung and his teenage son, the Park family from the manufacturing district. Normal people living normal lives. Daeho made notes carefully. What happened next? We waited. The shelter was underground, built into the bedrock. Solid construction, multiple air filtration systems, emergency supplies for weeks. We sat in the main chamber and waited for the all-clear signal. How long? Did you wait? 6 hours. Then the bombardment started. Jiwoo stood up suddenly and walked to the window again. His reflection in the glass looked like a ghost. Pale, scarred, haunted. You can't imagine what it sounds like when quantum cannons hit a planet. The sound goes through rock, through metal, through your bones. It's not just noise. It's like reality itself is screaming. The attack came without warning. No warning at all. One moment we were waiting for an evacuation drill to end. The next moment, Etherian warships were destroying everything we had built. The human turned back to face Daeho. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that we fought back. How? Yang Tai-Wu went first. When the quantum blasts started hitting the shelter, he began moving differently, faster than human reflexes should allow. He could sense incoming attacks before the sensors detected them. Jiwoo began pacing again, his movements sharp and agitated. Dr. Lee Jae-sung connected his mind to the shelter's computer systems. Suddenly our defenses were responding perfectly to every attack. He was thinking faster than their targeting computers could track. What about the children? So Young and the other kids started doing things that should have been impossible. When part of the shelter wall collapsed, they held it up with their bare hands. When the air filtration failed, they somehow continued breathing normally. Daeho felt cold fear crawling up his spine. What do you mean, held it up? I mean they stood under tons of falling rock and stopped it from crushing us. 12-year-old children lifting debris that would have required heavy machinery to move. They weren't even straining. How is that possible? I don't know, maybe quantum exposure changed them more than we realized. Maybe humans have always had these abilities and just needed the right trigger. Or maybe we were evolving in real time under pressure. Jiwoo sat down again, his metal hand gripping the edge of the table. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Etherians threw everything they had at us. Quantum cannons, plasma bombs, kinetic strikes from orbit. They were trying to sterilize the entire planet. But you survived. Some of us survived. Lee Jae-sung rigged the atmospheric processors into weapons. Choi Min-ho used his quantum tunneling research to create shields that bent space around our positions. The children started displaying abilities that made the adults look normal. What kind of abilities? Park Min-jun could phase through attacks. Lee Yoonji could manipulate gravity fields. So Young began communicating telepathically with people across the colony, coordinating our defense. Jiwoo's voice was getting quieter. I watched my 12-year-old daughter take control of quantum energy with her thoughts and use it to destroy an Etherian gunship. She looked at me afterward and said, "I think I understand how the universe works now, Papa." What happened to the Etherian fleet? We destroyed half of it. Humans who had been terraforming engineers and school teachers 12 hours earlier were taking apart warships with their bare hands. The survivors retreated and sent a message to the Galactic Council. What did the message say? Protocol Omega. Initiate immediate sterilization of all human colonies. The species cannot be contained. The recording device continued its steady humming as Jiwoo fell silent. Daeho watched the scarred human and tried to process what he was hearing. It sounded impossible, but the man's injuries were real. His pain was real. How did you escape? The journalist asked. Lee Jae-sung activated his quantum beacon system, the one Choi Min-ho had been working on. He broadcast everything. Our research, our discoveries, tactical data about Etherian weaknesses. He sent it to every human settlement in the galaxy. Instantly? Faster than instantly. The information arrived at the other colonies before he finished transmitting it. Quantum tunneling doesn't follow normal rules about time and space. Jiwoo looked up at the ceiling. Then the real bombardment began. The Etherians brought planet-killer weapons. They turned the surface of Omega-7 into molten glass. How did anyone survive that? The children saved us. So Young and a dozen others linked their minds together and created some kind of quantum barrier. They held it for 3 minutes, long enough for a few escape pods to reach orbit. Where did you go? Scattered. Different ships, different directions. The idea was to make it harder for them to track us all down. I took a damaged pod to the nearest neutral world. What happened to your family? Jiwoo was quiet for so long that Dai-Ho thought he might not answer. Finally, the human spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. Hyejin was in the atmospheric processing center when it was hit. She died trying to maintain life support for the evacuation shelters. And So Young? I don't know. She was with the other children when they created the quantum barrier. The last time I saw her, she was glowing with energy I don't understand. She looked at me and said, "We'll find each other again, Papa. We always do." Jiwoo's metal hand was shaking now. That was 3 years ago. I've been running ever since. Running from what? From the hunters. From the fear. From the knowledge that my species is being systematically exterminated because we committed the crime of evolving too fast. The human looked directly at Dai-Ho. You want to know why I'm the most dangerous species in the galaxy? It's not because of what I can do, it's because of what my daughter can do, and she's still out there somewhere. The medical center felt different now. The white walls seemed to press in closer. The air recycling system was too loud. Dai-Ho found himself looking toward the door, wondering if anyone was listening to their conversation. How many humans are left? He asked. Jiwoo was staring at his reflection in the window again. Officially, 12. The Galactic Council keeps very careful records of extinction events. They like their paperwork to be accurate. And unofficially? I don't know. Maybe hundreds. Maybe thousands. Maybe just the 12 they claim. Jiwoo turned back to face the journalist. The galaxy is a big place. Easy to hide if you know how. Are you in contact with other survivors? Sometimes. We have ways of communicating that the authorities can't monitor. Dr. Nam Soo-jin managed to escape from Colony Beta 3 before it was destroyed. She's been working in the underground, continuing her research. Dai-Ho made careful notes. What kind of research? The same research that got us marked for extinction. She's studying human evolution, trying to understand what we're becoming. Last I heard, she was somewhere in the Outer Rim, using a false identity. What has she discovered? Jiwoo smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. That the galaxy made a mistake. They thought they could kill us all quickly before we became too dangerous. They were wrong. What do you mean? The attacks, the pressure, the constant threat of death, it's accelerating our evolution. Humans who survive quantum bombardment don't just live through it. They come out changed, stronger, more capable. The human began pacing again. Choi Min-ho disappeared after Colony Gamma 6 was destroyed. Intelligence reports say he's been spotted on 12 different worlds, but always just before major technological breakthroughs happen. Faster-than-light communication systems that work better than anything the Etherians have built. Energy shields that can stop planet-killer weapons. You think he's responsible for these breakthroughs? I think he's not the same person who used to fix atmospheric processors on Omega-7. None of us are the same as we were before. Dai-Ho set down his stylus and looked carefully at the scarred human. What about you? How have you changed? Jiwoo stopped pacing. You're very observant, Dai-Ho. Most people don't think to ask that question. Your eyes have been changing color since we started talking. They were brown when you sat down. Now they're silver. Silver, yes. It started about a year ago. Dr. Nam Soo-jin thinks it's connected to quantum sensitivity. I can see things now that I couldn't see before. What kinds of things? Energy patterns, probability streams, the flow of information through quantum fields. Jiwoo sat down across from the journalist. I can see that you're afraid of me. For instance, your bioelectric field is fluctuating with stress patterns. Daeho felt his scales prickle with unease. What else can you see? I can see that this interview is being monitored. There are recording devices in the walls that you don't know about. 3 Etherian security agents are positioned outside the building. They've been watching us for the past hour. The journalist's blood went cold. How can you know that? Because I can sense their quantum signatures. Every living being has one. It's like a fingerprint made of energy instead of flesh. Jiwoo leaned forward. I can also see that you didn't come here just to interview me. You came here to gather intelligence for the Galactic Council. They want to know how dangerous the remaining humans really are. That's not true, Daeho said quickly. Your heart rate just increased. Your skin temperature rose 2 degrees. Your bioelectric field shifted to a pattern I associate with deception. Jiwoo's silver eyes seemed to glow in the harsh light. I can read you like a technical manual, Daeho. The room fell silent except for the humming of the recording device. The journalist realized that his hands were shaking. But that's okay, Jiwoo said softly. I expected this. The galaxy is afraid, so they send spies disguised as journalists. They want to catalog our abilities so they can find better ways to kill us. I'm not a spy. Maybe not intentionally, but your editor gave you this assignment for a reason. And your editor received funding from sources he probably doesn't want to identify. Jiwoo stood up and walked back to the window. The truth is, Daeho, it doesn't matter anymore. The galaxy has already made its choice. They've decided that humans are too dangerous to exist. Nothing you learn here will change that. Then why are you telling me this story? Because I want the galaxy to understand what they've created. They tried to exterminate us, and instead, they accelerated our evolution. They turned ordinary humans into something beyond their comprehension. The human's reflection in the window was shifting, becoming translucent. Daeho blinked and looked again, but Jiwoo appeared solid and normal. Theory. Children are the key, Jiwoo continued. So Young and the others who survived. They're not bound by the same physical laws that limit adult humans. They can manipulate matter and energy in ways that seem impossible. Where are they now? Everywhere. Nowhere. They exist in quantum superposition, present in multiple locations, simultaneously until they choose to collapse into a single reality. Jiwoo turned from the window. 3 days ago, I received a message. It came through quantum channels that the Etherians can't monitor. The message was from So Young. What did it say? That the children are ready. They've learned to control their abilities. They've made contact with each other across the galaxy. And they're coming home. Daeho felt terror crawling up his spine. Coming home where? To Earth. The galaxy quarantined our homeworld thinking it would contain the threat. But Earth is where our species began. It's where we're strongest. And the quantum barrier the Etherians built around it? The children can walk through it like it doesn't exist. The recording device was still humming, still capturing every word. But Daeho was no longer thinking about his interview. He was thinking about escape routes and transmission delays, and how long it would take a warning to reach the Galactic Council. You're wondering if you should run, Jiwoo said. You're calculating how quickly you can get a message to your handlers. I'm not. Your bioelectric field is spiking with adrenaline. Your muscle tension indicates fight or flight. Response. Your quantum signature is shifting toward panic frequency. Jiwoo walked closer to the journalist. But here's something interesting, Daeho. For the past 10 minutes, my quantum signature has been synchronizing with the recording device. Every word I've spoken, every thought I've had has been encoded directly into the quantum substrate of your equipment. What does that mean? It means that when you transmit this recording to your editors, you'll be transmitting more than just audio. You'll be transmitting a quantum virus that will spread through every communication network in the galaxy. Daeho lunged for the recording device, but his hands passed through it as if it wasn't there. The red light continued blinking steadily. Don't worry, Jiwoo said calmly. The virus won't hurt anyone. It will just make sure that every being in the galaxy hears my story. All of it, exactly as I told it. Why? Because they need to understand what's coming. The children are returning to Earth. Dr. Namsu Jin is preparing to reveal her research. Choi Minho and the other survivors are converging on key worlds throughout the galaxy. Jiwoo's eyes were fully silver now, glowing with an inner light. The galaxy tried to exterminate humanity. Instead, they created something beyond their worst nightmares. We are no longer the species you first encountered 50 years ago. We are what you forced us to become. What are you? We are evolution incarnate. We are adaptation given form. We are the future, whether the galaxy wants us or not. The recording device stopped humming. The red light went dark. But somehow Daeho knew that the interview was not over. It was just beginning. Give my regards to the Galactic Council, Jiwoo said as he walked toward the door. Tell them that Park Jiwoo sends his thanks for the education. Tell them that humanity remembers every lesson they taught us. Where are you going? Jiwoo paused at the door and looked back. Home. It's time for the most dangerous species in the galaxy to reclaim what belongs to us. The door closed behind him and Daeho was alone with his recording device and the terrible knowledge of what was coming. Outside the window, the alien city continued its normal activities, unaware that the galaxy was about to change forever. The journalist picked up his recording device and discovered that it was no longer just a simple audio recorder. It pulsed, with quantum energy, ready to spread its message across the stars. Ready to tell the galaxy that humanity had survived, and that humanity was coming home.